right, hello, health heads. Welcome and thank you for checking in to this dose of the healthcare uprising. I'm your producer in the back, Jeremy Carr, here with your host in the front row, Heather Pierce. So, who we talking to today, Heather?
We have Melissa Mark, who is actually a friend of mine here in
Isn't
Flagstaff.
everybody, though?
I mean, everyone's my friend. She is a licensed therapist. She is I would say, a practitioner in EMDR, not in EFT tapping, but we are going to cover that as well. So she's going to dig into all things around EMDR. I'm not even going to try to spell that out outside of the acronym. She does it in the show, but it's another way of providing some mental health support and therapy in a different way.
And if you're a regular listener, you'll know we've mentioned this EMDR in a couple of recent episodes.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to figuring out what it's really all about finally, because I still don't really get it. So without further ado, let's jump on in here to our conversation with Melissa Mark.
Hi, and welcome to the Healthcare Uprising podcast. Today we have Melissa Mark, a fellow Flagstaffer. We'll fight about that later.
I guess one already. I got you to say it that way.
She's a licensed professional counselor, or LPC, and here to talk about EMDR and EFT tapping today. Welcome to the show, Melissa.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and Melissa and I have been friends through the Flagstaff community and the moms groups for a while. Back
Yes.
to
All of
when
our kids went to D. Miguel, I believe.
Yeah,
So
that's
it's
right.
elementary school. Yeah.
Yeah. See, we bring on our friends on this show because I know a lot of really cool people that are doing really cool things. So, Melissa, you're one of them. So, super happy to have you on.
And I'm excited to hear about this because this EMDR stuff has come up in a couple recent episodes,
It
and I still don't really know what it's all about. So
Okay.
I'm excited to see this.
Yeah. So, before we get into kind of like your background too deeply, but I do want to talk about that.
Mhm.
Right off the bat, can you just share with us what EMDR is? And then I know we're going to talk a little bit about EFT tapping. I think we're going to focus mostly on EMDR, but we'll cover both. So let's just kind of set it up, tell people what it is, and get them excited.
Sure. Yeah. The simplest way to explain EMDR, because it is kind of a weird concept unless you go through it yourself, it's a little bit hard to wrap your mind around. So, EMDR actually stands for eye movement desensitization reprocessing. So basically, well, I'll start with who founded it. So it was founded by a psychologist named Dr. Francine Shapiro, who was specializing in trauma. And for one day, she was walking in the forest, I remember her saying, and then she was thinking about kind of a distressing memory that came up for her. And as she was walking and thinking about it, she noticed that her eyes were moving back and forth just in a natural, process as she was thinking about it. And then as she came out of her walk and out of the forest, she thought, that doesn't seem as distressing right now to me. Something about the eye movement and the way she was thinking about the distressing event, it led the level of distress to go down in her body. And so basically, she founded EMDR, which is led by a therapist. And you can use your two fingers to have your eyes trace, the therapist's fingers as you talk about some event in your past that was distressful. Okay, it could be a severe event. It could be something like you were embarrassed in a situation, just something that you still continually think about that causes you some sort of distress in your life. And the more you do that, and the therapists have a technique, like you have to really have a therapist that's certified in this, because they have to assess for first, like, emotional safety, physical safety, because if you do go through this process, you can kind of become re-traumatized if you're not in a safe situation, if that makes sense. So basically, you're using bilateral stimulation to reprocess events in your brain that have been stuck and you can't get past. And this helps them to release and the body to reprocess them so that they're more tolerable for the person.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Wow.
I know it's a hard thing to describe without getting too complicated.
Yeah.
It's a physical action causing a mental reaction. Physical action
Exactly.
causing a mental reaction. There you go.
Okay.
Exactly.
Took me a second to get that out of my brain.
Well, and trauma in itself, the more research that comes out about trauma, it really is something that can stick in your body. Even though logically anybody with anxiety can attest to this, the most frustrating part is that you can logically tell yourself, I'm safe right now. This is fine. Everything's okay. But your body doesn't know that because your body remembers the trauma and holds on to it because you were stuck in a place where you couldn't really find safety or couldn't escape it, or you have these negative self beliefs that hold on to it, like, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I'm this, I'm that. And it's really hard to get past that until you allow your brain to reprocess it in a different way, if that makes sense.
Mm,
Hmm. That
mm.
does make sense. And it's funny you're saying that trauma getting stuck. We just did an interview, or we had a discussion with Jessica Tracy. She does young, she's a Jungian coach, so Carl Jung, and also what is it? Jungian integrative
Jungian psychedelic integration.
psychedelic integration.
Oh, yeah.
And
Okay.
and she was talking about that, like you can physically move trauma in your body through different modalities, I guess, of like maybe EMDR, but she was talking more in like the psychedelic, plant-based medicine, that sort of thing. But yeah, this keeps coming up.
Yeah.
So you have to be licensed, right?
Yes.
To administer EMDR,
Yes.
facilitate. What's the word for that?
Yes. Well, yeah, I think it is administer. You can, pretty much, use whatever word you want to describe it because it is imperative that you assess the client for emotional and physical, safety and stability. This is a practice to where it's kind of cool because you don't have to go into, like, if you have a lot of deep trauma, you don't have to go into the full story and keep telling it and keep telling it because EMDR is focused around a specific memory. So you can work at one specific memory at a time that is usually associated with a negative core belief. And so, I'll use a personal example because that's how I make sense of most things when people personalize them.
Mhm.
I had a severe eating disorder growing up. I grew up in a dysfunctional family household to where, my earliest memory is 8 years old, engaging in these eating disorder behaviors. My brain didn't even know what was going on. I couldn't logically make sense of what I was doing because I was a kid.
Mhm.
So I can logically, as an adult, say, wow, I was, that was, because the negative core belief that, I kind of had at 8 years old was that I'm not good enough. I'm disgusting, just really terrible things that you tell yourself at that age. And I couldn't move it out of my brain as an adult because my parents were telling me that. I was telling myself that. And that really was who I thought I was at the time. So logically, as an adult, I can say, well, I can move past that. That's fine. But it's still stuck there, if that
Mm.
makes sense. So
Yeah.
EMDR really helped me reprocess that and move it through in a way that my logical adult self can be like, you know what? You are okay. You can heal from that and, move forward. That wasn't the truth.
Wow.
Hmm.
So EMDR is really, would you say it's really specifically for trauma or anxiety or things? Does it like serve like certain types of conditions, I guess?
Yeah, most of the time people do think of it as a trauma modality. And I think of it in that way too. I'm not too sure if anybody uses it for anything else because usually it is associated with such a distressing event or a
Mhm.
distressing memory. And we have all levels of trauma. Even someone being humiliated in a public situation can be seen as a traumatic event if that person can't move past it. So, yes. And I do think it's, traditional talk therapy has its place, but it can only get you so far. And I can attest to that because, I hate to say this as a therapist, but if you're just talking about something in your present that, you have like a fight with a coworker or, you're fighting with your spouse, well, talking it out with a therapist can only get you so far. You could do the same thing with a friend or a trusted family member and not have to pay that
Yeah.
person, you know? But these modalities, these trauma modalities, such as EMDR, get to the deeper parts of us that we're holding on to. And you need a qualified clinician to help you move through that and make sure that you're, safe and processing it in a way. And what I didn't mention, you usually replace that negative belief with a positive self statement that
Okay.
it's true in the present. So, if my statement is, I'm not good enough, I'm flawed, I am disgusting, whatever the statement may be, you replace it with, I am good enough, I'm, a beautiful person. I just anything that you want to work toward with, and you talk about it with your therapist. Like, this is what I want to believe. This is what I believe right now, associated with this memory, but this is what I want to believe. And it's just an amazing process because still in my logical brain, I can't understand how it works, but it does. I can attest to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. It reminds me of our ketamine episodes with the kind of rewiring the brain,
Hmm.
Mhm.
but you're just doing it with, I mean, eye movement essentially. So I'm curious, like, how did she go from experiencing that personal moment in the forest to turning this into an actual, like, applicable mode of therapy? Do you know the history of it? Like, how she,
I don't know
what
all
the
of it.
process was, like, what process that went through?
I'm not
And I
sure
guess
about
more
all
to
of
the point
the.
now, this might be more in your wheelhouse. How effective is it really? Does this work on everybody? Does this, are there real stats on this? Is it being
Uh-huh.
done enough that there's real science to it and that, percentages of success and things like that?
Hmm. I don't know all of the exact details about how, it moved from her having this experience to applying it to clients and making it, a healing modality of treatment. I do know she's probably more scientific minded than I am, and she probably had a process for it. Um, because it was established, I believe in the 1980s, it's still relatively new, right? But it
Okay.
is considered to be an evidence-based therapy. So there is a lot of research that says that it is effective, especially when it comes to PTSD, like, when you have an event trauma like war,
Hmm.
sexual assault, just something that's like an event that happens, which is just, PTSD in general, as opposed to complex PTSD, which is still not in the DSM for some reason. I think it will be in the next year or two. And complex PTSD is more of a series of events, like when you think of like childhood trauma,
Gotcha.
a series of events that led to the PTSD that you're experiencing as an adult right now. And so, you know, the research on that, like I said, a lot of positive, effectiveness in terms of PTSD. A lot of people have said that they can be re traumatized and it made them feel worse. And I think that has to do with not working with a qualified clinician that needs to assess for that safety right away and make
Mm,
sure that you're a person that really would benefit from this therapy.
gotcha.
So it really brings that stuff up to the
It
front
can.
then. So it can be re-traumatizing just as
Mm-hmm.
much as healing. Wow. Okay. So yeah, you
It
really got,
can.
got to know what you're
Yeah.
doing there.
You really do. And, when I was practicing when I was younger, because I was licensed and I was certified in EMDR, I was very selective on which clients I would, introduce. And you have to, obviously get their permission and work together if they're open to it at first. And, I would say, usually you generally see about 20 clients a week. I would only use it on about 4 to 5.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
because it is such a personal decision, and
Hmm.
and everybody's in different levels of their healing and their recovery process and things like that. For my personal when I did EMDR with a clinician, I experienced immediate relief,
Oh,
and
wow.
it blew my mind.
You're like,
Not to say
okay,
it's
this is
not
it.
still there, but I don't get upset when I think about the memory.
That's, oh,
Hmm.
wow.
Yeah.
So this is really a great set. Thank you for setting up like what EMDR is. We'll get into the tapping stuff later, but so you are a licensed professional counselor who is licensed to provide EMDR. What drove you into this? Now you mentioned already you've had some of your own um situations growing up. Was
Sure.
that kind of the catalyst for you to go down this path and then do EMDR yourself?
Absolutely. And I think it's why, at this stage, I'm so interested and fascinated by trauma, because growing up, I didn't have a safe outlet. And a lot of us, I'm sure, had parents that didn't like to talk about feelings, and, you weren't, I look at it like, my job as a parent is to provide my child with a safe environment to be themselves. I'm just a guide, I'm watching their little personalities develop and grow up. And I love being a parent for that reason, because it's so cool, and
Mhm.
I didn't have that. And a lot of people didn't have that. I don't think, and, I'll get into this later when I talk about what I'm going to be working on now. For some reason in our society, it's controversial to say that like our parents should never have had children, and mine
Yeah.
shouldn't have. I'll just go ahead and say it. They shouldn't have. We were looked at as like burdens, instead of, like, oh, wow, these little people that, I'm so lucky to be able to, parent and be in their lives
Hmm.
and stuff like that. So I felt very alone. Like I said, I developed an eating disorder at a young age. And when I would try to go for help or come to my parents with like a valid feeling or concern, I was either met with contempt, I was shamed, I was punished, I was told I was too much or this or that. So I learned that I was the bad person. I was the one that needed to be fixed. I was, not safe anywhere. And so I really started to research psychology as a teenager. I'd go, there wasn't much available back then, but I'd go to the library and, look up. And then I wanted to major in psychology and like fix myself for that reason, because I honestly didn't know why I was doing these things. I was binge eating, I was bulimic. And then, for a while I was anorexic, all over the scope of eating disorders, while still thinking like, I am just this awful person that does disgusting things. And it wasn't until I got into college and, took some really good classes and then went on with my training that I found, oh, okay, well, this is why I did that. I'm not disgusting. I'm trying to cope with, these feelings that I have because, my parents hate each other. They have a terrible relationship. Everything is surrounded by resentment and shame and, just like an icky environment at home. And then
how do you not feel bad, right? Like
how do
when
you
you're in
not
that
feel that,
situation,
right?
I don't think anyone can get out alive in that, right? Like
No,
you're on the
exactly.
struggle bus
It's
in
like
But
trying not to
layman's
get
term.
wet when you live in a swamp. You know what I mean?
exactly. But
Mm.
you have so much shame because, as little people, we just absorb what our parents are doing and tell us. And so my core beliefs were honestly my parents telling me all this stuff and, the stuff that I had in my body. So it took me a long time to get to that point. And it wasn't just like, oh, I, majored in psychology and decided to be a therapist. So my eating disorder went away. That wasn't it. And so, it took a lot of, therapy and training and, self-work and things like that. And I just really wanted to be a therapist because I felt so alone. I didn't have anyone to help me. And I really wanted to help other people in a way. It was kind of like healing for me to help other people as well, if that makes sense.
It's really a common story. A lot of psychotherapists and psychiatrists and whatnot, they start out in it because they want to figure out their own problems.
Mm-hmm.
And then once they learn enough that they can actually figure out problems, they're like, hey, let me help other people too.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Even like the most famous ones, Freud and Jung and all the guys who created the processes that you use now,
Mm-hmm.
they got into it because they had issues that they wanted to figure out about themselves.
Yeah,
Like that's where it all comes from. I find it
exactly.
very interesting about the field, honestly.
Yeah.
It is
There's,
interesting. And it's kind of a slippery slope. You have to be careful not to have your own stuff get in the way of,
Yeah, that was a big
therapy
thing with
also.
Jung.
yeah.
Jung's whole thing is to not filter it through your own filters.
Uh-huh.
Like the therapist can't be biased in their approach to the patient. That's like his whole, like
Absolutely.
a huge thing with him.
Wow.
When
So you
I've
got into,
experienced that,
oh,
yeah.
sorry.
Oh
Didn't
no,
mean
it's
to talk over
okay.
you. Yeah, go
It's
ahead.
like any other field. Like, there's good mechanics, there's bad mechanics, there's good therapists, there's bad therapists. So you just
Yeah.
have to be careful and just really assess, as a client, if you, want to work on your stuff, you're trusting somebody with the most vulnerable parts of you. So you need to make sure that that person is safe and competent and,
Hmm.
that you feel good about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you. So obviously you became, you got into providing therapy, whether EMDR was part of that in the beginning or not, it became part of what you were licensed in
Yes.
and being able to provide that to your patients.
Mhm.
How though now, not every therapist is licensed into EMDR or wants to
No.
be, but
Mhm.
if how do you know if you need that, right? Like as a patient, like and where to go, where to start, how to
Mhm.
find a you, you know?
I think, again, using my personal stuff as an example, for me, a lot of the eating disorder therapy was very behavioral focused when I was first in my recovery and getting my training. So it was kind of like, okay, well, and a lot of it was helpful, don't get me wrong, but it was very like, okay, well, change this thought to this thought logically in your head. So if I think that, I am fat, I'm not going to eat, you have to like replace that with, no, I need food to nurture my body. Or they would have you do a lot of positive affirmations and you would, do healthy movement and, a lot of things that, and talk therapy. Fine. It only got me so far. And I still knew that there was parts of me that the therapy wasn't touching. And I think a lot of people can connect with that. It's like, kind of like the example I was using before, like talk therapy can only get you so far. If you can have the same conversation with a trusted friend or a trusted family member and get the same results, what is the point of therapy, right?
Right.
So if you know that you have deeper stuff that you, let's say, you are like so mad at your spouse for something, like it just bothers you all, but you don't know why. Like, he like, this shouldn't bother me logically, but there's something that it's triggering in me and I can't figure it out.
Because he's a loud chewer. That's not me. Sorry.
I mean,
Or a loud
that could
sneezer.
be a segue to the trauma, sure. But,
There might be some trauma there. I don't know.
right. But, or like, there's just something that you can't get past. There's
Yeah.
like something that keeps coming up. For me, I kept having panic attacks and I didn't understand, like, I'm like, logically, I'm safe, I'm fine. Like, why does this stuff keep coming up? And I knew there was something in me that I had to like get reprocessed and be released. And that's what led me on the path. And I think a lot of people
Mm.
that just feel that something is missing. And a lot of people do know what that is, and a lot of people don't want to go there. Obviously, if you have severe childhood trauma or things in your past that are very traumatic, it's a very difficult thing to do. And a lot of
Mhm.
people don't want to do it for years and years, if ever.
Yeah.
And, I hope that answers your question. I can go off.
Yeah, no, it does. Because I think, a lot of times, yeah, and we have been very much diving into like alternative health, which is kind of what, and mental health is a huge part of that.
Mhm.
Huge. Um, and there's physical health stuff too, but because we're covering this more and more, and we're doing it to, we want to educate people, right? And I think a lot of people will hear EMDR or even ketamine therapy that we've covered, or even like intuitive therapy, like all these things, even the liquid breathwork classes that we've covered on the show,
Mhm.
acupuncture. And sometimes this stuff feels like, oh, what is that? Like that's not like traditional mainstream stuff, right? Like I don't know what that is. Like, so that's uncomfortable to me. And so we're definitely trying to talk about it in a way that like, okay, now I get it, right? Like someone listening to the show right now it's gonna click and be like, oh, okay, wait a minute, maybe that is for me, and I shouldn't be scared of it. Um, I mean, uncovering your own trauma is a whole nother thing. Being open
Sure.
to doing something different is, you know what I mean? Like just
Yeah.
having another tool in the toolbox outside of like talk therapy. So, um,
Absolutely.
yeah, so I think that's, that's really important. So,
Hmm.
um, yeah.
Yeah. And like you said, a lot of the things that, are coming out now in the field of trauma, like the use of psychedelics and things like that,
Hmm.
people don't understand. And it's our immediate as humans reaction to be like, oh, nope, not going to do that, or that's wrong, or, that's
Yeah.
too much, or whatever it is, when it could be something that's very beneficial.
Yeah. Yeah. Just like the stigma. I feel like,
Yes.
one of our first shows that we did now almost a year ago was on ketamine therapy in these ketamine clinics. We have one here in town, Revitalize. Actually, Dr.
Mhm.
Casey came on, um, and we've interviewed some people about that. And I can tell you, just in the last year, when I first found out about it, I can tell you that I know more and more people that are starting to do it, and they're
Yeah.
becoming more open about doing it.
Mhm.
So that I feel like that stigma is starting to be erased or
Mhm.
minimized. But then there's all this other cool shit out there like this that I'm
Yeah.
like, hey,
You
like
don't even need the drug sometimes. Yeah.
maybe EMDR
Maybe
can,
not.
solve
Yeah.
your problems.
And
So
that actually leads me to a question. What
Mhm.
is the actual process? How, like, is
good
it
question.
rounds of treatments to get to like for that one memory, or is it just one intense thing? Because like with the ketamine, the doctor basically suggests it's usually like half a dozen or so drug treatments
Right.
followed by, rounds of psychotherapy with the doctor to
Hmm.
process what happened in those half dozen drug treatments. So
Mhm.
with this, is this like you pick one memory and you do one session, or it's like you have to keep going back to that memory to really get erase it and replace it, kind of thing?
Mhm. It depends on the level of trauma, and everybody is different. There are 8 phases of the actual EMDR therapy, and so it involves history taking and explaining the process, assessing for if, like I said, if they're emotionally and physically stable, identifying a target, identifying that, and identifying the positive self-belief that you want to replace with that, and then you go through the whole process. That can take one therapy session, and then you have to end it in a safe way. So there's a way for a therapist to close the session, make sure that the client is emotionally stable and ready to go home, and a lot of times I found when I was doing this with clients, it could take up to 3 to 6 sessions on one specific memory, depending
Oh
on the
wow.
severity of
Okay.
that. Hmm.
Just
Sometimes just one or
depending.
two.
Just
So,
there's a lot of variables, I imagine, just based
mhm.
on whatever that it situation was for them,
Yes.
or okay.
Yes.
It sounds so intense, and it's just eye movement. Like it really
Yeah.
does. It's hard to wrap the brain around.
It
Mm,
really
Like
is.
you
I
said that
hear
at the
that.
beginning. It really kind of is. Like it makes me want to experience it directly just so I understand it.
mm.
But
Yeah, that was the way for me to really understand because once you get certified, excuse me, and you go through the certification process, you're in a room in person training with clinicians and you do practice on each other. So
Oh,
that was kind of cool for me. And also, when I did this with a therapist in outpatient, we used sensors on my hand. So it was stimulating instead of the therapist, me following his,
like a
eyes,
like a
like,
nerve type of
like a
thing,
buzzer.
or like a
Like,
buzzer.
yeah. So like I would hold the sensors and then one would buzz on one side, then one would buzz on the other side. So it was just stimulating two sides of my body. I've heard of some people
Ah.
doing butterfly, going like this to
huh.
stimulate both
Like
sides of your
tapping
body.
their
Yeah.
shoulder.
Tossing your hands and tapping your
Yeah.
shoulder.
So it's just getting,
Interesting.
it's interesting. And even, when
Yeah.
if I have something come up to this day, I will listen. You can listen to, it's called EMDR bilateral stimulation beats or music. You can look it up on
Okay.
YouTube. You can look it up on, Apple and whatever. And I have my headphones on. I call it like my anger walks. If I need to like process something out, I put my headphones on, I put on the EMDR bilateral beats and I walk and it helps so much to like
That's
reprocess.
like that's like the binaural stimulation where you get the different sounds in
Yep.
the opposing
Boom,
ears.
boom,
Okay.
yep. Mm-hmm.
That's another episode I'd like to
Well,
find
I
somebody
want,
to come on.
yeah, right. Both sound therapy kind of works that way. I've
Yeah.
I've done that a number of times. Um, we do it at the end of the liquid breathwork sessions that I've been doing, but I've also done just like standalone sound therapy. I need to get somebody on to talk about sound therapy.
Mhm.
Yeah. So if anyone's hearing this, please, I'm gonna hunt you down. I found that similar, like what
Yeah.
you're describing,
Uh-huh.
where it can be really, and also depends on the acoustics of the room that you're in. Unfortunately, that
Sure.
has some that doesn't affect it, but where it's like it will be really loud on one side and it'll almost truthfully, I've like felt like where it's gotten so intense on one side that I've almost had to shake myself out of like the um almost like this meditational state that it puts you
Wow.
in, and then
Yeah.
it will go to the other side based on how they're doing the bowls. And
Oh,
it's
that's cool. Oh,
weirdest thing ever, and I love it.
yeah. I love all that stuff too. I'm really open to anything that gets us to feel and process things differently.
Hmm.
I think it's cool.
Yeah, and the way we can rewire our brains with things like that, with just visual or auditory stimulation, even
Oh, it's
just that
fascinating.
can
Yeah.
rewire your brain.
Yeah. What's actually happening in the brain? Speaking of the rewiring,
Mhm.
when somebody is going through EMDR, whether it's one session or six sessions or however many, what's
Mhm.
actually happening inside? Like, do we know? Or
Basically, and again, I don't really know how to explain it well without like
yeah.
diving into the science of it, which I'm not even good at. I just know that it is a way of just like retraining your brain to process things differently. So it's hitting different spots than it
Hmm.
normally, like it's stuck in a certain spot. And I know that sounds like really simplistic, but it's stuck because we were a child at that point, and that, you know what I mean? And like, so we're having our childhood associations with that
You're
memory
you're
holding
literally
place.
stuck in a rut.
Stuck in a
You're
rut.
stuck in a rut.
Yes. And this is allowing
This
more
gets you up out of the rut.
movement.
Okay. So like
Uh-huh.
the movie. Okay, interesting.
It's the
Yeah. It's
same as
kind of
what,
just like, have you heard about like massages making people cry?
Yes.
yeah, yeah,
It,
there you,
Even yoga.
yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the body
My
is
friend.
fascinating.
It
It's
is, yeah.
really
They talk
cool.
about that a lot in yin
In yin
with the
yoga.
long hold poses. They tell you
Yeah.
up front
Mhm.
like some stuff might come up if you start. I my reaction, I will just start laughing like a lunatic sometimes in the middle of
Sure.
doing it, like the Joker from Batman laughing, and I
Yeah.
can't control it. I'll just
Yeah.
start cackling like a
Oh,
madman.
that's funny.
It's weird.
It
Yeah.
triggered something. Yeah.
The,
Some people cry,
right?
Yeah.
but
It's a release,
you know,
right?
there's yeah, it's
Uh-huh.
like there's those things that you talk about that are built up, like physically built up in places in your body.
Mhm.
When you open up that area, that stuff comes out.
Yeah.
You
Exactly.
know, I
And
carry up my only repented emotion apparently is crazy because I laugh like a crazy man. That's the
that's
only thing that
funny.
comes out.
Uh,
I repress my crazy enough to function in society. That outside of that, I'm fine.
I want to
You
be
got to
there
let
next
that
time
out.
you start laughing
It it it
uncontrollably.
only happens once in a while, and thankfully, it's only happened at the sessions I've done at home.
Oh,
I don't
Yeah.
I
in
do
public.
most of my yoga at home by myself, but
Right.
yeah, The first time I went to do yin in public, I'm like, oh my God, I hope I don't start laughing. I'm going to freak these people out.
It's hilarious.
I'm sure they've
Yeah.
heard it all though, because it's
Yeah,
something to
true.
stimulate some sort of emotional release, however that comes out, you know?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I want to make sure we talk about EFT tapping too.
Sure.
We've spent a lot of time kind of understanding what EMDR is, and so anyone who's been listening to this point, I feel like I just want to say, if this sounds like something you need, right? Like find somebody who can administer it. Find yourself a Melissa Mark in your town or
And the cool thing is, it sounds very much like the psychedelic therapies we've been talking
it's
about, but you don't have to do the drugs. So if you're
Perfect.
someone who wants to go down that road and needs that kind of therapy,
yeah.
but you really don't want to do the drugs, here
Yeah.
you go.
Yeah.
Try this.
Ryan and Shelby, who run the Liquid, sorry, I keep talking about it. We had them on the show. I go to their class. Jeremy started going. They even say that in the beginning of when they're, especially for new people that are joining, they're like, if psychedelics isn't, plant-based medicine isn't something that you're interested in doing, this can provide some of the same type of relief.
Yeah, it
Or
does similar things to the brain.
EMDR, it seems like it's kind of in that same space. So anyway, we have another
Thank you.
option.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah.
don't be afraid of it. But so I want to talk about EFT tapping though.
Sure.
And I don't know if how EFT and EMDR even have any kind of crossover there at all. I hear a lot about people being able to do kind of tapping on their own. Like
Mhm.
I actually saw a movie not that long ago, and it was Mark Wahlberg, and I can't remember the name of it. He has this rubber band, and he's like super high anxiety guy, and he's snapping it and snapping it, and it's become it was such a part of his character. And I'm like, is
Yeah.
that some form of tapping?
Yeah, it
Anyway,
has
There you go.
similarities. It sounds more
yeah,
like self-harm to me.
right. Yeah,
I'm
it was
sure.
interesting, and I
An
was
uneducated approach to what we're talking about today. Yeah.
like, do people do that? But tell us a little bit about tapping. Let's shift a little bit there, and I know you're
Sure.
going to walk us through an EFT tapping exercise as well.
Absolutely.
So
That's cool.
Yes. Well, and like you said, EFT All Star, it's called the emotional freedom technique. And
okay,
so basically, this is something that you can do on your own. And this is something that there are therapists that do specialize in this. And I would
okay,
suggest if anybody has, a lot of trauma or there is like a serious issue that they want to work on, then I would, go to a practitioner that specializes in this just to make sure you're safe and
hmm
all that kind of stuff. In my case, I was never certified in EFT, but I left the field when my kids were born for what, just to stay home with them. And I was having all this anxiety and panic come up. And I went on YouTube and I discovered the EFT tapping. And I would do it on myself to kind of bring my anxiety down. And I found so much relief. And basically, it's based on kind of like, how acupuncture, you
hmm
stimulate different meridian points in your
yep,
body. That's basically what the tapping does. So we have different points on our body that stimulate the amygdala, and it is very similar to EMDR, which you think of, kind of a negative thing that you want to process, right? Like if I'm having all this anxiety. So, you think of like, I'm having all this anxiety right now, my heart's beating, like I'm panicking, I'm afraid of this, I'm stressed out because of this, all these negative things. And then you think of something that you want to replace it with. The most basic one, do you want me just to go ahead and
yeah,
show you? Okay.
let's
Yeah,
do
go
it.
for it.
For this. Okay.
We if you can explain as you go for our audio people, and if you want to see it, we're on YouTube.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. I'll try to explain it. It is easier to see it.
okay,
So basically, the points are right above the eyebrow, on the side of the eye, below the eye, on the bone,
okay,
below the nose, below the lips, and then below the collarbone,
okay,
under the arm, right where your bra is for women, and then on
okay,
the top of the head.
really? Okay,
And what you're going to
Huh.
do is you start with, it's called the karate chop point of the outside of your hand. And
okay,
so, for example, I would start to talk about my anxiety. And so I would just say, as I'm tapping, I would just say, I have all this anxiety.
right here.
I have all this anxiety in my body. It's making my heart race, making me feel stressed out. And even though I have all this anxiety, I still love and accept myself.
Okay,
Even though I have all this anxiety, I know I can calm myself down. Even though I have all this anxiety, I know that I am safe. Okay. And then once you're solidified in that, then you start with the eyebrow. Even though I have
Okay.
all this anxiety, I still love and completely accept myself. Even though I have all this anxiety, I know that I am safe and I can calm myself down. Even though I have all this
Moving around the eye.
anxiety,
I can't fit
I
under my
love
glasses.
and completely accept
Right here.
myself. Uh-huh. Even though I have all this anxiety, I know that I am safe and I am calm. Even though I have all this anxiety, I love and completely accept myself. Even though I have all this anxiety, I am bringing my heart rate down and I am capable of calming myself. I have all this anxiety and I can let it go and be safe and calm. And then you take a deep breath, and usually you can do that about 3 times through. Okay.
Okay.
And then you take a deep breath and you release it. And then you see if you feel, you can rate yourself on a scale from 1 to 10 before you begin, just to see how high your anxiety is or your
Mhm.
self-defeating statement. And then you can reassess, and you can just continue to do that as much as you need to do.
Okay.
You can
I
also do
definitely
the
feel
other
a little
hand.
lighter.
Yeah, I feel like it's
Yeah.
very calming.
Anyone who wants to see that, it's on YouTube.
Yeah. And I imagine too, it 100% I am a child of the 80s, Gen X all the way. I was entirely thinking about Jack Handy and positive affirmations from the SNL. Gosh darn it, people like me. So
It's very,
it's
yes, I can see
it
that.
is like it's kind of like positive affirmations. A little
Mhm.
throwback there for people of a certain age. So I imagine that statement will change depending on whatever it is that you're trying to
Absolutely.
deal
Yeah.
with.
The
Okay.
example I was using, because sometimes, it's necessary to involve a self statement, like I do love and completely accept myself. In some cases, it might be more, appropriate to say, I am able to calm myself. I am safe. I am,
Okay.
so it just depends on what, I was trying to kind of use both examples
Yeah.
just to kind of do a run through. But yeah, I can see where the similarity comes in, because we were taught that that was like the cheesy, Stuart Smalley with the mirror and everything like that.
Oh, did
Um,
I say Jack Handy?
Jack Handy's also correct.
I
Oh,
think
oh
it
my
was,
gosh.
yeah, I think it
Oh,
was.
The what was it? Deep Thoughts with
deep
Jack.
thoughts
That's
with
what it
Jack
was.
Handy.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah,
He was more
sorry.
philosophical.
Similar thing.
But yeah. So, and it's just kind of, and I'll touch on the inner child in a little bit, but it's kind of, and I know the inner child concept is a wild one also. Like it
Oh,
took me
we've been
years to
covering
We had
that
a
too.
we
This
had
is
an
great.
episode on that. Carissa
Did you?
Cano a
Oh,
few
good.
episodes
Bring it
back.
on. Bring it on.
Because that's again, and I think all of these kind of stem from these, childhood beliefs that, like, because anxiety is scary as a child, and you feel like you can't talk yourself out of it and you can't work yourself out of it. So by, letting your brain reprocess it on these, meridian points, and then replacing it with a safe adult statement, it really does, allow the healing to happen, or at least decreasing anxiety. And a lot of studies have shown that it decreases cortisol, it helps you sleep better. It really does work in a lot of situations. So,
Yeah, that's cool.
It's pretty amazing stuff. Yeah.
Awesome.
and it's great because you can do it by yourself.
Yeah, yeah. And truthfully, when I had put that Facebook post out, which ended up bringing you to me for for this particular topic, a couple other people had commented saying how they've used tapping both with themselves, their kids for like different, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know what their specific situations were, but it
Mm-hmm.
seemed like there was more, I guess, maybe more common use of it than I was aware of.
Yeah.
But you know, a lot of people still don't know. Like, I didn't really know what it is, so now I do.
It
Yeah.
it almost felt like a focusing exercise as well. Like,
Hmm.
are there applications for this for things like ADD and things like that?
Oh, good
Because
Oh,
question.
sure.
that
I
honestly
think,
made me feel like I could like it, could very much just focus you in a way. The tapping.
Yes, I think it depends on the individual. And again, I'm not certified in this, as a practitioner. And so I suggest if you do have anything specifically that you want to work on that you don't get relief from like doing it on your own or watching a YouTube video, then, contact a practitioner. And this is a great thing. You can even do it on Zoom with someone that's out of state if you can't find someone locally. It's super easy to do that. And again, it depends on the severity of what you want to work on. But I find it very helpful.
Yeah.
No. Hmm.
Okay. So yeah, let's talk about inner child. What do you got on that? We
Yeah,
really like
sure.
this topic.
Yeah, we did a whole thing. I'm trying to remember the name of Kirsa Kuno's. It's some sort of intuitive psychotherapy,
Mm-hmm.
but a big thing for her is doing inner child work, and basically it creates a proper emotional response to things instead of reacting with that inner child and like
Mm-hmm.
overreacting emotionally to little things. It gives you a better baseline for
Mhm.
your emotional control, I guess, is really what it is in the end, right?
Yeah. What
Mhm.
are your thoughts on that? What have you done with it in terms of with your patients, I
So,
guess?
like I said, it took me a long time to even get in touch with that I had an inner child
Mm-hmm.
because from such a young age, I was treated like an adult. In my family, I wasn't allowed to be a child. I wasn't allowed to make mistakes. I wasn't allowed to mess up. You should have known better. Why did you do that? That type of thing. And so I think I suppressed my natural childhood curiosity responses, everything like that. And anytime I did mess up, it was like, oh, you should have known better. Well, how would I have known better, as a child, and nobody taught me things like that. So I
Mm-hmm.
really shut off from that inner child and I became a very parentified kid from a very young age. And so as a practitioner, when I was getting trained in the inner child, trauma training and things like that, it's important for any trauma work to really understand what happened, what the story is, and who you were as a child, right? Because any deep trauma comes from childhood. And your inner child is basically, all children come into this world innocent. All you want is to be loved, safe, cared for, and, really appreciated, right? Basic needs. And if you don't get that, then your inner child, they didn't get what they needed. And so as an adult, you can find yourself, I call it like operating from my, lower ego state where I'm just, I get triggered by like any little thing that happens. I don't know if I'm explaining this well. It's kind of like there's,
I'm tracking. I'm
Yeah, no,
tracking.
we
does
got you.
that
Yeah,
make sense?
Yep.
yeah.
Okay. There's like, it's hard to explain. I think like getting in touch with that vulnerable part of you, right?
Mm-hmm.
The part of you that didn't have to overcompensate for things or like pretend that everything was okay. Like it's a very vulnerable part of you. And so for a long time when I was doing therapy with clients, I could see it in them. I could see their wounded inner child. I could see, that child come out. And it was so hard for me to connect to mine. For some reason, I had a block. And then little by little, I started to kind of say, oh, okay. So when, I'm kind of like, crying, because, I didn't get, what I wanted in this area, or like what if I didn't do a good job on this client and then I go into my office and cry, that's not an adult reaction to that. That's a
Mm-hmm.
very like wounded inner child, like I'm not good enough reaction, if that makes sense. And
It
so
does.
the purpose of inner child work is to have your adult self reparent that part of you that didn't get what they needed in childhood.
Mm.
Because the theory of trauma is that we're all operating from that inner child place, right? Does that make
Okay.
any sense?
It
Sorry.
does. And it is interesting the way that you just said that too. Reparent yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like I hadn't really considered that being a part of it, but that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And it is because, if we didn't have attuned caregivers that, gave us that safety, gave us that
Mhm.
self-love, gave us that everything, because as kids, you do absorb what your parents, tell you,
Right.
or your caregivers, whatever. If you're like, for instance, my reality was completely denied. It took me a long time to even trust myself. I had no self-trust because every time I said, well, what about this, and this, and brought it up. No, that didn't happen, never happened, and as like that's crazy making as a kid because then you're like, well, but it did, but maybe I'm crazy. So the reparenting process for me was a lot of learning to trust myself again, and going slow and listening to my inner voice. And if I had a gut feeling about somebody or something, really going with that and trusting it instead of suppressing it, because that's how I adapted. Right. And that's how I survived for so long, is just repressing everything that made me me.
Right. Yeah. I feel like there's a whole lot of like Gen Xers out there that probably need EMDR, probably tapping, probably ketamine therapy might it's like
All
that,
the works.
or drinking too much, which is, I feel like it's like the last generation of
Yes.
relying on like substance abuse,
Mm-hmm.
particularly alcohol,
Mm-hmm.
um, for just kind of covering up these things. So like we all need to just get out there and get help and just like accept this, that there's a better way.
There
The poor,
is. And you can
the
look,
poor us.
just look around our world right now. Look at our country, look at our society.
Yeah.
You can see a bunch of wounded inner
Oh God,
children
yeah.
fighting and
Right?
bullying. And, just
Hmm.
it's almost like, we can be re-traumatized even just in the society we're in
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
It's like
childhood.
our whole society is living on its inner child right now in this country.
Yeah. That's kind of
Every
Absolutely.
reaction to everything
true and awful at
is a
the
childish
very same time.
overreaction
Yeah.
on from
Childish.
every angle
Yep.
right now. It really
And
is.
bunch of traumatized children that haven't done any work, right? And
Yeah.
Hmm.
it's very difficult to reason, right? We see firsthand, you can't reasonably like you can't use logic, you can't use truth, you can't use it's very frustrating. And
Hmm.
so that it's very important for those of us who can, use insight and want to work on ourselves to really try to reparent that part of us that is kind of like a wild, like wounded child that either causes us some distress, like you said, with like the drinking, like just trying to like, okay, calm down, calm down, calm down, let's not work on that, let's not talk about that, da, da, da.
Yeah.
It's easy to do that, right?
Totally.
I
Yeah.
mean, that's just what we were taught too.
I
You
can
don't,
say, as a taxi driver in a college town, the next generation is not drinking.
I love
Yeah.
that.
They are horrified of making a fool out of himself in public and having it show up on social media.
Mhm.
Oh,
That's literally what it is. Social
Mhm.
media has stopped the next generation from getting wildly drunk in public.
that's interesting
Wow.
because I
It
was
made
like,
my job a
oh,
lot easier. I don't have to worry about college kids puking in my car
that's
anymore
good.
because
That's nice. Yeah, that's a perk.
they don't ever get that drunk.
Ah,
Interesting.
I mean, I can't
I
even
think legalized
imagine.
marijuana helped too, but the biggest thing is social media scared them out of drinking.
Yeah.
It's a wild phenomenon in my mind.
Okay.
Like it's a crazy because what do you do in college? Every
Right.
generation before them had a very similar college experience. They are rewriting the book on that. It's
Well,
not college is not what it was when we went anymore.
Yeah.
that's a key phrase you just used, is that we were all doing it. It was like a rite of passage, right? And I'm so grateful social media wasn't around back then,
Yeah.
Oh my
because
God,
that
all
would
the
have been so
things I wouldn't have been
scary.
able to get away with.
It's all just
Oh,
made in here.
it kind of killed fun.
Exactly.
It really kind of
Exactly.
killed fun in a way.
Yeah.
But I've
Well,
had a
and I
couple of college kids complain that now it's our turn and there's nothing left to do.
but I also think, and I know parents these days get a lot of criticism for, being helicopter parents and things like that. And I won't even, go into that. There's always a balance with things. You don't want to be
Mhm.
too one way or too the other. But I do think, in general, like you kind of said, Heather, with Gen X, like we had very hands off parents. A
Oh
lot of
yeah.
us did. I know not everybody, but most of us did.
Hmm.
And parents are not like that anymore. Parents are
Yeah.
interested in what their kids are doing. And, I think they talk to them a little bit more and I'm using blanket statements. This not doesn't go for everybody, but I think
Right.
that makes a big difference too. You're just not left to go wander and figure things out and experiment and
Yeah. The whole latchkey
um,
kid, right?
right, exactly. Yeah, nobody was at my house. Like, whatever.
Right.
I could do whatever I wanted. So
Yeah.
that could be a different, perspective on it too. But I'm just grateful that, and again, I love wine. I have nothing against drinking or anything like that, as long as you don't
Hmm.
do it to
Excessively.
excess or to cover, yeah, to cover things up and things like that. I mean, I look at myself, in the throes of my eating disorder, I used alcohol, smoking cigarettes, diet pills to not eat. So that's a problem,
Mm, yeah.
that's not great. But there's a balance to everything. And I think that if our kids can figure out how to relax and how to have a good time without drinking to excess and without, making fools of themselves and hurting their bodies and hurting other people, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I like the old adage of drink to remember, not to forget.
There you go.
Perfect.
When you really look into
that.
that statement, it tells you everything you need to know about alcohol.
It's so true. It's so
Wow.
true.
Well, we have covered a lot of things today. And I think, by the way, I think we might be able to pull a 15-minute fix out of this one at the
Oh,
front on EMDR. So
no.
one of our little short kind of short episodes that we like to do when we can. Um, so this has been a really great conversation. I just see us coming up on time here, and as usual, it went longer than I planned. But this was a great conversation, Melissa. I'm so glad that you came on and
You.
educated us and just
Yeah, it's
normalizing
good,
these things.
good to know what this stuff actually is now, because I've heard it a few times and now I actually know what it
Yeah.
is.
I
Yeah.
appreciate it. Yes. And I did just want to add one thing, just
Yeah.
because I recently reinstated my license. So I am going to go again and get recertified in EMDR just for ethical purposes, just because it was so long ago that I was certified. So
Yeah.
I can't, I'm not going to administer EMDR until I'm fully certified again. So just to
Great.
let everybody know.
But she'll be back in business here soon.
I
So
am in the
we'll make
process.
sure. Yeah. So once you've got your practice back up and going, let us know and we'll make sure to add it to the show
I can
notes.
always add it to the show
Yeah,
notes
like if
later
you have
once
a
you're ready to
website
go.
or
Yeah.
how to
Wonderful.
get in touch with you our Flagstaff community who might be interested in this kind of therapy.
And in the meantime, and if you're not in Flagstaff, now you know what this stuff's about, and find a local practitioner if it sounds like the right stuff for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Open your mind to the possibilities, folks.
You know,
I think that's
and it's
important. Yeah.
Yeah.
it's cool that
Mhm.
we're finding things that are so similar to psychedelic therapy, but with you don't need to
Yeah.
actually do the psychedelics.
Yeah. That's not for everybody.
It's a whole nother path that people can follow that I was unaware of. So
Yeah.
that's really cool. Yeah.
Yep. Cool. All right.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us on the Healthcare Uprising. Make sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons before you go, and take a moment to think of a friend and hit that share button. You can find us on all the major audio platforms, and we've got video on YouTube and Patreon, patreon.com/healthcareuprising, if you want to watch us in action.
You can also find us on social media on LinkedIn, Blue Sky, Instagram, and Facebook. Just search Healthcare Uprising to find us. And if you're a new company or a creator with a cool new product for the healthcare space, or if you're someone with a personal healthcare journey and you'd like to share it with us here at The Uprising, please email us at healthcareuprising@gmail.com and we'll get back to you about coming on the show. That's all for this dose of Healthcare Uprising. Till the next time, keep looking for the good in the world, because sometimes it's where you least expect it.
This has been a Shut Up production.
Shut up!